All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both books published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. Today, I'm going to be reviewing The Darkness That Comes Before by R. Scott Bakker, probably one of the most requested reviews I've had on the channel. I mean, people request it. They've probably seen the entire set here. I've got the entire R. Scott Bakker set of books here, right here, and you've all probably seen them on my shelves as I've done bookshelf tours. And people see and say, "Hey, when are you going to review those? When are you going to review those? Have you read those? Why haven't you reviewed those yet?" Well, I'm starting to reread them. These books, you gotta be in the right mood to read these books. I'm gonna tell you that right from the get-go. These are not easy reads. These are not fast reads. These are the type of reads, much like Steven Erickson's Malazan Book of the Fallen. You gotta be in the right mood. You got to be ready to pay attention to every word because the writing is thick and dense. The prose is gorgeous and you want to slow down to follow it, the prose, just to get all the magic that's within that. And it just takes time. It just takes time to get through these books if you want to do it the right way. This came out in 2003, published by Overlook Press. So let's talk about that first. I read these all when they first came out. I have not read them since. I don't remember a whole lot about them, so I'm kind of launching into them all anew. Let's talk about the covers first. I like the covers. I like the way that they're set up. I mean, like I said, you put them here together and they all seem to match and look nice on the shelf. You hold them up individually, and they've all got an individual look, but yet they stay similar in design elements and tone. So I think the covers are great. Let's give a thumbs up for that. So now let's talk about this book specifically. The Darkness That Comes Before, book number 1 in the Prince of Nothing series. Now, there's a character list in the back, which is great because we need to we need to keep these characters. We need to know who they are. There are a lot of them, and they've got a lot of funky names, a lot of funky fantasy names. By the way, the naming convention that R. Scott Bakker uses for every town, river, mountain, mountain range, sea, and character is absolutely on point. You can tell that he really took time and effort into making sure that every single name that was placed in this book felt like it fit in this world. And that's what we're going to be talking about, is a lot of world building as I go through this review. The maps are great. There's several maps that just are gorgeous maps. Look like they were drawn by J.R.R. Tolkien himself. I love the maps. Absolutely love the maps. So let's talk about the characters, the book, and the plot a little bit. Spoiler free, though. We start off a prologue with Kellis. He's a mysterious traveler that we meet. He's 33 years old. He's leaving Ishual, Ishual. By the way, a lot of these are just beautifully, they roll off I'm going to butcher them as they roll off of my tongue. But as you're reading them, they roll off of your tongue just beautifully. It's just a beautiful language he's created here. Anyway, Kellis, he's on a journey by foot from Ishual to Shema and the hall of his father. And he travels through ancient forests and ruined keeps. And just as we see this lone traveler traveling across this landscape, the amount of world building is just massive in scope. We know we are in a fantasy world, that the writer has taken the time to add just so much intricate detail, not just to the things that we're seeing with our eyes, the ruined keeps, the ancient forests, the haunted buildings, the mountain ranges, but the way he talks about the history of these places. Everything that you see, you can tell is just steeped and dripping in history. And that's just in the prologue with one guy walking alone. And we get all that. And it's beautiful to read. And we get the hints of a much larger world out there that Kellis is going to meet. Now we jump to, now he's a Dominion monk, and he's on his journey to the hall of his father. Now we jump to a town called Carathusil with Drusus Acumen. He's 47 years old. He's a mandate sorcerer / spy. And he is sent on a journey across the sea to a place called Sumna to meet with the senior members of the Mandate Quorum. And that's, I'm not going to get too much into what the plot points of each of these things are, but he ends up meeting some Shrael Knights. He ends up in confrontations with different factions of the Shrael and prostitutes, things like this. Esminette is another character that we get to see this world through her eyes. She is a Sumni prostitute. Paro, I can't remember, was it Paro? Yeah, Paro in Rao, he's a Shrael priest and a former student of Drusus Acumen. We get to see this world through him and this city that they're sort of living in. And then we also get another one of the great characters, Cnar, spelled Cnaiur. And he is a barbarian. He's sort of like our Conan the Barbarian. He's like a chieftain. And he's got things going on in his life. And all of these characters that are so beautifully built. The thing about Kellis, the first guy that I talked about, the lone traveler, we get to see him in the prologue for quite some time. And then he disappears from the book for about 2/3 of the book. And then he comes back in grand fashion. And I love those scenes between Kellis and the barbarian chieftain, and just how things play out between them, the war band and and just all of it's just, the world building is top notch. And now I'm going to do some name dropping. Okay, because on this channel I'll name drop like a motherfucker. So I'm very, very familiar with, I've never met R. Scott Bakker, but I have had many conversations with his agent, Chris Lotz. In fact, Chris Lotz is one of the people that helped me in getting... Chris Lotz is not my agent, but he did help me, and I do give Chris Lotz a shout out in the acknowledgement pages of my books, because he has helped me on my journey to get published. And on my journey to get published, we actually did talk a lot about R. Scott Bakker, because Chris Lotz represents R. Scott Bakker. And one of the things that Chris told me is one of the reasons that he initially wanted to start working with R. Scott Bakker and get these books published is he said, these are, and I will agree with him 100%, these books, there's no fantasy out there in the world except for these books by R. Scott Bakker that you can compare in scope and world building to the world that Frank Herbert created with Dune. He compared this to Dune. This is the fantasy version of Dune. And I really think that that's a pretty accurate description, just because of how much political intrigue is going on behind the scenes in Dune, and how the world building is done in Dune really mirrors what R. Scott Bakker's doing here. So if you love the Dune saga, you are absolutely going to love the Prince of Nothing saga by R. Scott Bakker. And you'll want to get this and read it, because you're going to see a lot of parallels. And Chris Lotz was correct. As I was rereading this, I'm like, yeah, this is like Dune is next level world building and writing, and R. Scott Bakker is touching upon that genius with this. Anyway, so it's just a spectacularly written book with some great characters, a lot of great action set pieces, and everything that R. Scott Bakker touches with his words. It's like every word seems to build this world all the more. It's like every word that comes out of a character's mouth, or that everything that a character sees or tells the reader about, it just stacks up the world building all the more until you know you're just living and reading about a lush environment full of real people with real issues and real problems and life or death situations, and evil lords that are going to destroy everything. Anyway, I that's my review of A Darkness That Comes Before. I think it's really good. In fact, if I was to have to redo, because I did my top 40 fantasy series of all time, and this almost made it. I think if I was to redo that video, this would probably end up, because I'd forgotten how brilliant it was. In the 19 years it's been since I read this, I'd forgotten how brilliant it was. And it'd probably end up in the top 20 for sure. So maybe one day I'll redo my top fantasy series video. Maybe. We'll see. I give this a 10 out of 10.